don't just pick up a camera and put it on a Ronin and just start doing property tours, because when you do that, all you're gonna be is a commodity. The real value in being a content creator and videographer, photographer, whatever you may do, it's not necessarily in your gear and the content you create, it's how that content is gonna be used to grow their business. You roll? You got sound? All right, why real estate? I've been involved in real estate for a large portion of my life. Back in the 2000s, I was a loan officer. I did finance, sales and finance, finance and developments all over the city. Some of my earliest memories, I remember pitching some of the brokers that I've done a lot of business with to write loans for them back in the day. Little known fact. But after doing that, I got sick of doing that and writing loans, and I got into investing, and I built up a very large investment portfolio of multifamily properties. 2008, 9, 10 hit. Obviously I started INDIRAP, and one of the lowest hanging fruits that I saw, if you know INDIRAP, I started it because YouTube was popping off and I knew how to grow brands and talk business. So one of those first low hanging fruits I hit up was real estate, because back when I started this in that 2010, 2011, 2012 phase, there was really there were no property tours. There were no, broker brand videos. There was none of this fly shit that there is right now. It was just a lot of photography. And I remember I forgot what the name of this gadget was, but there was some company, they put this 360 camera in, and a property tour was just this thing spinning very slowly in a 360 degree fashion in each room, and you can go from room to room. It was garbage. And I was like, I know how to talk real estate, I know how to talk brokers, I know how to talk investment, and I know how to make this shit look sick. So, when I started this, I picked up a CS magazine and I just started calling brokers all over the place. I just spoke the language, and that's why it made sense. And that was really the first line of business outside of obviously corporate and the other side of INDIRAP. But that's really how I started this. And I remember calling a lot of them, and I got a lot of, fuck you, what do I need video for, blah, blah, blah. The exact opposite of now, where it's like, no shit, you need video. I didn't really have a portfolio. The first agent that I hit up that actually let me do a tour was a guy named Phil Scourin. He worked at Properties, and this guy let me go. I think I had, all I had was a 60D. I went to Magnanimous, I rented a 14 millimeter lens from Magnanimous, and I had this bootleg slider that I had rented on a bootleg tripod from, I think I got it from eBay or something like that. You should have seen this slider. I think I needed WD-40 to get it going at first. So I put imagine putting WD-40 slider. Anyways, Phil let me shoot at the Ritz-Carlton, which was above what used to be the Armani store on Chicago Avenue. So I'm up in there. This place was insane. And that was the first property tour. And it turned out super sick. I mean, I was inspired at the time. Again, there were no real property tours. Nobody was marketing this shit in Chicago. I've always loved real estate. Real estate for me, especially luxury stuff, is just sexy to shoot. And that's what I wanted to bring. I wanted, if this place is selling for $2, $3, $4, $5, $8 million, how do you create a marketing piece that you could send out and market your property without having 1 million people walk through your property every day and you having to do open house and all this kind of stuff? That was the real thinking behind doing property tours. So that was the first one that I started marketing myself as a real estate videographer, video production company in Chicago. And that's really where it all kicked off and started. So, after I had that first, piece of content under my belt, I'm sure I did some other property tours and things like that to grow a portfolio, but nothing memorable. The first one's always the most memorable. But I understood that there was way more to do in the real estate space than just property tours. When I created INDIRAP to create sales, marketing, training, and recruitment content to help grow brands. So it's how else could I help the real estate space as a whole grow? Not just brokers, not just everything, real estate developers, investors, construction companies, all this shit. So I went back to the drawing board and started figuring out, okay, how can I scale this company, and this company? And the same way that we were growing, tech companies and things like that at the time, I applied that same treatment to real estate, but with a twist, right? So the brand video for agents, the first one I think we did in the city was for Carrie McCormick, who's obviously a hitter in the city. She's one of the best to ever do it. We did it for her, which she did a referral to a guy named Azim Khan, who he's one of the best developers in Lincoln Park. Roscoe Village area. And that was the opportunity to be like, okay, cool, now we're shooting these $3 million cribs, but how do we create a brand video for a developer, right? Because what a broker's selling is how to buy and sell real estate. What a developer's selling is why you should buy this fucking amazing property that they just spent all this money on. So it's two totally different value propositions, right? So you can't just go on with the same treatment, and then you have a company like LG Development, who we did their first brand overview video for. It's like, this is a construction company who's building some of the most awesome shit in the city. How do we create the brand content for them? So it was very well thought out how we were going to create content to help grow each individual vertical of the real estate space: development, brokerage, individual brokers, construction, pre-construction, groundbreaking, shit that wasn't even built yet, conceptual stuff where all you have is a 3D rendering to work with. We start coming up with new products to do this, and to do, neighborhood tours. First guy to do neighborhood tours was Matt Laracy. You know what I'm saying? Like, we did, I want to say it was 10 or 12 tours that nobody ever did. The problem that we solved there was, as a broker at the time, it's like, if somebody's trying to move to Chicago, how do you show them all these different neighborhoods without driving a fucking, 20 miles in your car, paying for gas, getting ticketed, going in and out, or even them doing it? How do you do it if you got somebody that's out of state or somebody that's in another country? How do you show them tours? That was the problem. How do you show them neighborhoods? That was the problem that we solved with neighborhood tours. So that's how all this content was born, right? That's how it all started. The first property tours, the first brand videos, the first neighborhood tours, the first development videos. Back in 2013, 14, 15, the Chicago skyline had fucking cranes all over the place. We were literally in every one of those buildings creating content to roll out and lease up those buildings to get them to, from pre-construction to almost done to 95% leased up. We were in there creating development overviews, showcasing the model units, the amenities, the neighborhoods, all that kind of stuff. And we started to blend all those techniques to create an entire suite of products that we could market and use to grow all these different real estate brands in Chicago that eventually went nationwide. On the investment side, we started working with big developers like John Buck to showcase their entire portfolio along Wacker Drive. We did the CNA Tower to Northern Trust sale, but then we also did their, I want to say 7 or 13 skyscraper portfolio along Wacker Drive that we did in 7 days. So everything that we were doing, we were trying to break records with, right? And roll out the products. Now, the second layer of that is okay, it's cool to shoot and make products, but how do you make this the sickest shit you ever seen? Because again, we at INDIRAP, we always wanted to be innovating. We always wanted to be the best. We wanted to be number one. That's why we got to where we're at right now. So the technology was a lot different back then, right? I think when we started shooting with Laracy, I think we were shooting on C100s and A7S1s and maybe the A7S2. We were also doing a shitload of motion control time lapse. That's when the Kesslers first came out. Nobody had this gear out here. Nobody was doing this shit. I mean, we were literally shooting from 9 a.m. to sometimes 9 at night, running around with like motion control fucking time lapses on my shoulder with red cameras at one point all through the city. I mean, this shit was crazy. We'd be running around with, $60, $70, $80, $100,000 worth of gear in the back of my Jeep, taking down all sorts of stuff. Motion control time lapse. The Phantom 2 with the GoPro Hero 2 on it. Was it the 2 or the 3? We were doing that. We had that first. That was when you had a 50% chance of crashing that goddamn drone every time you went up in the air. The first drone stuff, I bought I forgot the name of the company, but they were selling Phantom 2s with the GoPro 2 on there aftermarket. And they came with like this big ass hobby remote, the kind you see those guys flying those crazy fucking hobby aircraft with. I had one of those. It was like a $4,500 investment, and it allowed me to fly further, higher, all this kind of stuff. But still, we were doing aerial all over the city, but you still had, the technology just wasn't what a Mavic 3 Pro is today, or a Mavic 2 Cine. It's not the same, and you literally had you had that flyaway issue. So sometimes we fly and that fucker would just go flying backwards or flying over here. So I took a lot of losses when aerial content first was hot, not just in the city, all over the country. It was something to where we were experimenting with so much technology and rolling out the content. It was something that we were creating from scratch, and it was something that was super fun the whole time, and that allowed us to create something that had never been done before. When it comes to talking about brokers and what they need, you really have to think through their entire process of a day. Is like, again, what is going to add grease to the wheel to make it spin faster, right? How do they sell more? How do they market themselves more? And that's really the thought with creating anything. You know, if you're just creating content for good looks, something that's not going to move the ball forward, whether it's for sales or for marketing, what's the purpose of doing it? And that's really why our content took off. There were people that came out that were, you know, trying to imitate or do similar shit, but the narrative and the brand goals and initiatives were not baked into the creative, right? So when you do that and you drop it, it's something that you post one time and that's it. It's throwaway content. It's garbage content, right? It's really about creating content that's going to help them move the ball forward for their brand. Whether that's, you know, hey, what are your Q1 goals? What are your, you know, June goals? What are your 2-year goals? How are you trying to grow? Are you trying to recruit more people on your team? And that's really the thought that you have to have with anyone when it comes to real estate developers, right? Again, whole nother set of issues. We just bought this plot of land. We got some renderings, but we need to get this thing pre-sold or pre-leased up before it's complete. How do you do that? You know, and there was, in the beginning stages of what is real estate content today, there was really nothing to do that. There were a lot of old ways of doing shit. You know, those brochures, open houses, sitting in a trailer, fucking every weekend, drinking coffee, recovering from a hangover, and passing out brochures to people. That's not really fun. How do you do that on scale? What you do is you create content, you distribute it with, you know, pay-per-click or Facebook ads or whatever it may be, YouTube pre-roll, and that's what we started to break down and explain to these developers, that there's an easier way to do it. You know, so when we start working with, you know, companies like Graystar on the property management side, or Lincoln Property, how does someone who has like a Graystar that owns thousands of developments, thousands of units all over the city, all over the country, how do you have an asset that you can turn on or off at any time, that can, when your occupancy drops below 95 or 90%, you can turn it on and get applications on? That was the thinking for property managers, right? How do you show model units off without having to walk people through all the time? How do you show how sexy your unit is before it's even built? That was the purpose, and that was the point of everything that we created, was to really think about how it would be used and how it's going to help grow a real estate business from nothing to something. So what's the difference between residential and commercial real estate? In my opinion, it's two totally different cities, right? Two totally different cities, neighborhoods, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot more people involved in residential real estate when it comes to brokers and getting your real estate license. Is a very, very low barrier to entry, right? You take a test, you become a residential broker, and you start telling people you're in the 1%, blah, blah, blah. I've found that a lot of that smoke and mirrors. The best experiences that I've had, or that my team's had working with brokers, has always been working with the top 10 or so brokers in the city, right? Wherever it is, whether it's here, whether it's in Colorado, in Denver, whether it's in Dallas, the best experiences on the residential side are always with those people, because what I've found is that those people at the top have actually built businesses around their craft, which is selling, you know, buying and selling real estate for people. They've actually built businesses, whereas a lot of other people are trying to build a brand, they're trying to figure out their processes, they're trying to build their team, they're trying to do all these things, but at the same time, they put this air of, I'm a big professional out there, and they have to pretend and play this pretend game, this $1 million agent game, when for the most part, that's not true. I've worked with the best in the business. I know they're the best in the business in this state and many others, and I just know that they do 90% of the business, and everybody else is kind of trying to get to that level. And that's totally fine. We all got to start somewhere, but the bravado and the ego that I've seen come into the game over the past 10 years, it's a turnoff. And I almost feel like it's a character that a lot of these residential brokers put on. It's not impressive to us or anyone else. It's actually a reason why we don't want to work with you. On the commercial side, I wouldn't say that you don't see that as much. You know, when it comes to investors or developers, there's a level of business acumen that I think comes with that side of things. And I'm not saying that to say that there's no bullshit attached to the commercial side. I'm just saying that there's way, way, way less. When you're building commercial real estate or you're investing in these types of things, building the buildings from the ground up, there's a level of professionalism, right? You got to have your performers. You got to have your ROIs and all these other things. You got to have your spreadsheets. You know, you're dealing with architects and you're dealing with all these other things that you might not be necessarily dealing with. And in doing this, you have to have your shit together, right? You're asking for permits. You're putting up skyscrapers. You're dealing with different cities. There is a way more professionalism that comes with the commercial side that I enjoy working with. I've learned a lot from the residential side from the top people that I've worked with, right? From, you know, the people I mentioned earlier. But on the commercial side, I've learned so much from them in doing, whether it's, you know, creating RFP stuff, whether it's creating new development stuff, rolling out in different cities, you know, like out in LA, it's like marketing a property, a 730 unit development in LA is totally different than marketing something like that in Chicago. It's two totally different markets, two totally different demographics, two totally different ways of shooting that you have to adapt to market to these different people. There's a level of engagement and entertainment that has to come with every piece of content that you create in real estate, but there's less bullshit attached on the commercial side, in my opinion. What I don't like about real estate, I don't know, I think I mentioned it already. The ego, there's a toxicity that I see in certain groups of realtors that comes with being a realtor in a lot of circles. You know, that the sales, high pressure, commission only, pretending to make a lot of money when you're actually broke. Like that level of toxicity, I prefer to not be around. And as I've grown my business, as we've, you know, created content all around the country for huge fucking global brands, as well as some of the top brokers, it's not something that I don't involve myself with it anymore. You know, my sanity and my enjoying what I do and having fun is way more important than working with people for a couple of dollars that are just fucking toxic. So that's primarily the thing I don't really enjoy. Also, when we do things on the commercial side, that content is appreciated way more than it would be on the residential side with people that don't actually produce, right? They might not, it might be somebody that might sell a house a year or 3 houses a year, but they act like they sell 30 million houses or something like that. And no matter how great you perform, no matter how amazing of content you create, there's zero appreciation for the work that you do. And that's just something that is just no bueno at this point. You know, we've built a business that's extremely successful. We've created content for some of the best brands out there. And the least that you could do as a real estate broker or brokerage, and this is advice for all of you all listening, just show appreciation to your photographers, your videographers, the Matterport people. Show appreciation for the work that they do, because to be honest, with no marketing, there's no real estate, right? Without the photographers, without the videographers, there is no marketing and selling the shit that you do, right? You'll be back to brochures and things like that. So that's a hard fact. And you know, just something to take along with you as you elevate your real estate career and go from selling 1 house a year to maybe selling 100 houses a year, because we really work hard and we really want to see you succeed. But without that appreciation, go fuck yourself. What is my advice for someone looking to get into or to grow their real estate, you know, content brand, whether it's video or photo or anything like that? I would really say is understand real estate at a very deep level. Don't just pick up a camera and put it on a Ronin and just start doing property tours, because when you do that, all you're going to be is a commodity. Anybody and their mother can do that shit right now. Realtors put their phone on a gimbal that they bought off Amazon, and they do their own property tours. The real value in being a content creator and videographer, photographer, whatever you may do, it's not necessarily in your gear and the content you create. It's how that content is going to be used to grow their business, right? I'll say it again. It's not in the content you create. It's not in the video or the photo library. It's in explaining to these people that, okay, once you have this content, this is what needs to happen with it so you can grow your business. You don't make money on producing video content. You make money on video and the distribution of it. So you need to be very aware of, and this is for any company, whether it's real estate or whatever, but in the real estate, that's number one. Number two is speak real estate, know the language, understand what people are talking about, understand architecture, understand what makes shit sell, understand what's hot, understand your focal lengths, understand when 14 mil is way too goddamn wide for this place and it makes it look like a fun house when you need to throw in a 24 millimeter to make it look more like Architectural Digest. Understand the sexiness and the luxury properties of a property of real estate to make it the most attractive possible. Also understand the difference between like residential and commercial. You know, with residential, when you work with brokers, you are gonna be working your ass off because again, it's a very crowded space. That's what most people go into first, you know, because real estate is very sexy. You see all these million-dollar listings, selling sunset, all this fucking shit. And everybody does that. So just know that you're jumping into a red ocean. Everybody's doing that. How are you gonna differentiate yourself from every Joe Blow doing property tours, doing reels, right? The price has been driven down so low. So how are you gonna make yours different? How are you gonna make your shit better? And again, it might not be in the content. It might be in your personality and how you talk to people. It might be in your process. It might be in how fast you get shit delivered. But if you just run into the game thinking you're just gonna do property tours, you're gonna be working down to the fucking bone. I'm telling you, you're gonna working your ass off. Understand those other avenues like I talked about earlier, like developers and commercial brokers and investors. Understand those other avenues of ways to make money in real estate. It's not just residential real estate brokers. There are so many other avenues. There's global real estate brands. There's property managers, property management companies that manage thousands of units around the country, hundreds of thousands of units. There's investors that need, RFPs created, investment work, things like that. Understand all that and understand the work that goes into creating those different products for those different verticals of real estate so that you can invest your time marketing yourself to them the right way. Because if you're gonna put in all this work over here to make this amount of money versus putting in this amount of work over here to make this amount of money, what makes more sense to spend your time and effort doing? So you gotta think about that. Don't become a commodity like a lot of video people, like a lot of photographers that just get into the shit to create pretty pictures. Pretty pictures are not gonna allow most people to grow their career past shooting pretty pictures. That's not enough. I got to where I'm at because I understood sales, marketing, operations, business, and all this other shit so that I could talk to people, whether it's a broker or I'm in a boardroom with 8 fucking shareholders talking about investment pitch that we need to create in a pro forma. I understand how to speak that language, and that's what makes me valuable to the people that I do business with. All the pretty pictures and the gear and all this sexy shit, those are tools that allow us to do our job at the highest level, but that doesn't come without understanding all that other stuff. That's the value in building a brand and creating relationships with people that are serious about their business.